can draw this in Procreate. During this tutorial, we will start with some basic shapes, then we'll start adding more color and texture. I will show you how you can use the smudge tool and make use of different layer blending modes. All of the brushes we'll be using are totally free. Some of them are already in Procreate and some are part of my treasure chest brush pack, which you can get for free by going to freefromflow.com. You won't just find over 70 free brushes, but also my ebook about color theory. So go and grab that if you haven't already. And then if you're ready, go and set up your canvas. For this tutorial, we're using a canvas that is 3000 by 4000 pixels. And the color profile is set to sRGB. I have created a color palette for you, which is also totally free. It is linked in the description. And don't forget that once you have followed this tutorial all the way to the end, to share your work online. If you're sharing it on Instagram, be sure to tag me in the image, not just in the description. So perhaps we'll be seeing your work in the next video. And also check out these amazing works from my friends at Patreon. At Patreon, you will find more than 100 other Procreate tutorials, ranging from beginner level to more advanced levels. And you will also get a whole bunch of brushes, like my Flowtastic brush pack, which you can get nowhere else. But now let's get started with this tutorial. The first thing we'll do is drop in a color for our background. Let's go and grab this first color in the first row of our color palette and let's just drop it onto the screen. And I will go ahead and make the basic shape of our mountain. We'll do that on a new layer. So go to the layer menu and tap the plus for a new layer. And now let's go to the selection tool. That's the S shape ribbon. And let's set it to freehand. And you can also turn on color fill. You'll know that it's turned on if it's blue. And for the color, let's go and grab this color over here, the third color in the first row. And now by using the selection tool, we are going to create a mountain shape. And we'll start here. And we'll want to make a bit of a wobbly line, but also a little bit jagged. So you can make some of these pretty straight lines, diagonal lines, and we'll gently move up. And we'll want to be at the top here around the vertical center of our canvas. So we'll gently go up until we are about here. And then we'll move back down here. Still make it a wobbly line. Here we'll go up a little bit. And here we'll go down. And then we'll go this way like this. Then we'll need to close the selection. You need to go around like this. And then close the selection by tapping that little circle. Now when we close the selection by tapping the S shape ribbon, you can see that we have a nice jagged shape. I think we can go a little bit lower here. We can adjust the shape. We can actually just use the eraser, tap it, and let's set it to a brush from the treasure chest brush pack. Let's use the fine liner brush. And now you can just sculpt your mountain. Remove some parts. I have the opacity of this eraser set to 100%. The size is at 23%. Just make sure that you keep it jagged. You don't want a very smooth looking mountain. I feel like we can make this a little bit more pointy. Erase a little bit here. You can just carve your mountain, adjust it bit by bit until you have a shape that you like. I just want to make sure that I have a nice high peak over here and then another little peak right next to it. Something like this should be fine. Now let's make a new layer. We are going to make our foreground. So let's tap the plus in the layer menu. And this time for the color, we are going to use this color over here, the fourth color in the second row, and let's again use the selection tool. So that's the S shape ribbon. It's still set to freehand and color fill is turned on. And now we are going to start about here. It's about 1/3 of the height of our canvas, and we are going to make a bit more rounded shapes because there will be rocks here. So these are some like boulders. So make something like this, then loop around all the way to the bottom and close your selection. If you want to add some more boulders, you can just make these extra selections and adjust the selection, adjust the shape like that. And you can also do the reverse. You can tap remove here if you want to remove a part of your selection. It's just as simple as adding stuff. So that way you can carve your selection, carve your shape until you have something that looks like this. I just tap the S shape ribbon to get out of the selection. And if you still need to adjust some parts, of course you can go back to the eraser and adjust the shapes like that. You just want some nice bit of rounded shapes for your boulders. And finally, we'll make some shapes in the foreground. So again, we'll make a new layer by tapping the plus. And again, let's use the selection tool, but first grab a different color. Let's grab this 5th color in the 2nd row, a lighter color. Then go to the selection tool. Let's move our canvas up a little bit. And first we'll make a bit of a diagonal shape over here. A little bit wiggly. Close that selection, and then another one over here. Big shape like this. And then close the selection. Now once you have all of these basic shapes, first let's tap the S shape ribbon. Now you have these, you can move them around a little bit. For instance, I want the mountain to be a little bit higher. We'll just go to layer 2, then go to the move tool, that's the little arrow. And make sure that you have snapping turned on so it will stick to the center. And move it upward a little bit. Just don't make it touch the top of your canvas. I also want to move layer 3 up a little bit. So first select it, then go to the move tool and drag it up a little bit. Do see that we have a little gap here, so we'll need to fix that. We'll need to grab this color. You can hold your finger on the screen, go to the selection tool, and just fill that area like this by selecting it and then tap the S shape ribbon. Now we have the basic shapes and now the fun can begin. We are going to add texture. First, let's make a new layer on top of our mountain layer. We're going to start with the mountain. Tap the plus for a new layer and set it to clipping mask. Tap the layer, turn on clipping mask. And if you are a frequent watcher, then you know that whatever we start painting on this layer, it'll only show up on our mountain. For our color, we are going to grab the darker color. That's the 2nd color in the 1st row. And we are going to use the selection tool again. I just love using the selection tool when I need nice and crisp edges. And when I want my selection to be a little bit jagged. We are going to select this part of the mountain. It's like a different part of the mountain in front of that high one. We'll start here where we have that little peak. We're going to start here and we'll make a diagonal line going downwards. And then we'll loop around and we'll close that selection. Now I'm going to use remove by tapping here. And now we are going to remove a part. We'll start here at the 2nd peak and we'll make a jagged line going down and to the left a little bit over here. And then we'll loop around on the right side and close that. So now when we tap that S shape ribbon, we just have a dark part here on the left side. You can also use the eraser again to erase a little part. I want this to be a little bit more steep. Now let's do something similar for this left mountain. Let's make a layer underneath this one. We'll tap layer 2 and then tap the plus for a new layer. And we'll go back to the selection tool. And this time we'll make some different selections. We'll start here on this left side of the peak. We'll go down diagonally like this and then back up and then back down again. And then we'll go down here, And we'll make a bit of a slope here. Then we'll close our selection. And then we'll go to remove again here at the bottom. And we'll remove a part here. We'll start here at this little peak. And make a jagged area like this. And close that selection. Then tap the S shape ribbon. And now we have another shape. Now we can go to the layer menu and we can actually merge these bottom two. We just want that top one, that layer 5, to be separate. And we are going to start adding texture. First, make sure that you turn on alpha lock, because otherwise, if we paint the texture, it'll go outside of the shape and we will get weird, like fluffy mountains. We don't want that. For our brush, we are going to the organic brushes. And we are going to use the clay brush. And for the color, let's grab a lighter color. Let's just use this third color in the first row. That's like this light color. I have the opacity set to 100% and the size of this brush is set to 20%. And now we're just going to go over the mountain, add a little bit of texture. And we are going to do the same for layer 5, but first make sure that you turn on alpha lock. And then go over this side as well, just for some base texture. And let's also switch the color. Let's grab this first color in the third row. Let's first go over the bottom here. And a little bit over the top. Just a little bit of color variation. Let's do the same on layer 2. So select layer 2 and then go over these areas just for some basic texture. Let's also grab that blue, that first color in the first row. That is what we used for our sky. Let's put that on top as well. We need some color over here too. And then that second color in the first row again. We just want a little base here. And we are also merging these areas a little bit. Now finally, let's also use that fourth color in the first row. Just near these tops. A little bit. Also over here. For a little bit of light, and here. And now it's time to do some smudging. We are going to use the smudge tool, the little finger here at the top, and we'll go to the painting brushes, which are part of Procreate, and we are going to use the dry brush. The opacity of this brush is set to 75%, and let's set the size to 10%. And now we are going to go over these areas in this direction, diagonal strokes. And we are going to blend this a little bit and give it this nice texture. Over here at the top, we'll make diagonal strokes. And over here, this face of our mountain will make vertical strokes. And here we'll make diagonal strokes again. This is like a steep wall of our mountain. There we need those vertical lines, vertical strokes. And here this is like a slope. There we need those diagonal strokes again. Over here, go a little bit diagonal. And here we can slightly change the angle to shape our mountain here. Then we have this area. Let's go to layer 5. Still use the smudge tool with the dry brush and make these diagonal strokes following that shape of the mountain. So now we have a nice start, but we want more texture. First, let's merge these mountain layers. We don't need them to be separate anymore. I want to blend them a little bit. Now for the brush, we are going to use the old brush. It's right on top of the dry brush. And for the color, we'll be using that fourth color in the first row. And now let's add some snow here at the top. By using this nice and smeary brush. By the way, the opacity is at 100% and the size is at 10%. And we'll just smear this paint around a little bit. Over here as well. Just some extra light paint. Making diagonal strokes. You can add some here. And a little bit on this slope. Looking a little bit like a snowy slope. You can add some light here as well. Using a little pressure here, so we only get a light effect. Here as well, we'll make these vertical strokes. And then you can switch to that smudge tool set to the dry brush to blend things if needed. But you want a very nice texture look for your mountain. And every time, make sure that you go in that same direction on each of the slopes. Next, I would like to use a new layer on top of this layer by tapping the plus, and again we'll set it to clipping mask, but this time we will change the layer blending mode of this layer. First we are going to make a multiply layer, so tap the N and then scroll up to multiply. This is great for adding dark areas, adding shadow to your paintings. For our brush, we are going to use a brush from the treasure chest. We're going to use the fine liner brush. And for the color, we are just going to pick up a color from our canvas. You can just tap and hold your finger on the screen to grab a color. The opacity of the brush is set to 100% and the size, let's set that to 60%. And now we are going to add some dark cracks, some dark lines, following the angle of the mountain. Here we'll separate these two a little bit by adding a darker line here, and we'll add a little dark line right along this ridge. Just make some very jagged random shapes here. Also along this slope you can add some diagonal lines in some places. Here as well. You can make some markings like this. Over here we can make some horizontal lines here to break up this area, to not make it look too smooth with all those vertical lines. Some cracks in the wall here, with some short horizontal strokes. Over here as well, perhaps a vertical line. And in between these passes of adding dark texture, you can just use the smudge tool and soften it a little bit. Make it merge with the mountain a little bit. Make it less harsh. Now let's switch to a screen layer. First we'll tap the plus for a new layer. Again, we will use clipping mask. Then tap the N and scroll down to screen. Instead of shadows and dark areas, using screen will add lighter areas. We'll still be using the fine liner brush. And for the color, let's grab a local light color. And now let's add some light touches to our mountains. These tops, they are very light. We have light snow there. Follow that ridge here. Add some light here. Over here, we'll make diagonal lines just like we did before. Stick to that same direction. And here at the top, again, diagonal lines, adding this snow. And over here. And again, you can just use the smudge tool if you want to soften it. Use that same direction to merge these light areas. We'll switch back to the brush. You can use some more light stuff. Some light parts over here, making these vertical strokes. And over here, this nice slope. You can go a bit lighter. I want some light over here. This is like a flat plane here in between these mountains. So we need horizontal strokes because it's a flat surface. You can see that I'm working very messy to get a nice textured look. I use the smudge tool again. Blend it a bit. Now I want to use another brush from the treasure chest brush pack. I want to use the Dakuki brush. The opacity of this brush is set to 100%, and let's set the size to 45%. And let's use this to also add some more light, but at the same time some nice texture. And this is also blending, merging everything together a little bit, because these slopes were a little bit dark. And by using this texture, it brings everything together. Bringing the values closer together. And I'm using very light pressure. And if you are using this and you feel like you're losing too much detail, you feel like you need more dark cracks, then you can just continue making another brush set to multiply, for example, and then paint on that, adding more cracks, and then have another layer set to screen to add more light. And that way you can slowly build the details up in your mountain. Once you have this, you could actually merge these layers together. This will save layer space. We'll merge them together, and then you can use that smudge tool again and just smudge some areas, blend it a little bit. And like I said, you could go for another pass of multiply and screen to add even more details here. I do feel like the mountain is a little bit grayish. I think it could use some more color. Now, the way I like to do that is by adding a multiply layer. Just tap the plus. Let's set it to clipping mask so our color will only show up on the mountain. Then tap the N and set this layer to overlay. Now let's grab a soft brush from the airbrushing brushes. And for the color, we'll grab this blue, that first color in the first row. And the opacity of this brush is set to 30%, and let's set the size to 50%. And now let's glaze over the mountain and give it more of a bluish hue. And if it's a little bit too much, you can just tap the O here and lower the opacity. Let's set it to 60%. Then we'll tap the plus for a new layer. Let's again set it to clipping mask. And this time we'll grab this light color, 5th color in the first row. And let's gently glaze over this lower area and create a little bit of a haze. This is also nicely blending everything together. All right, now that we have our mountains, let's move on to the rocks here in the foreground. First, let's go to the layer and let's set it to alpha lock. So everything else is locked and we can only paint on these rocks so we can add some texture. Let's go to the industrial brushes, which are part of Procreate, and we are going to use the wasteland brush. Then for the color, let's go and use this 3rd color in the 2nd row. The opacity of this brush is set to 100%, and let's set the size to 20%. And let's just go over this area with very light pressure to add a little bit of texture here. You can also switch to that darker color, 2nd color in the 1st row, and add a little bit of dark texture as well, just for some variation, like this. And then we'll make a new layer on top by tapping the plus, and we'll set this layer to clipping mask. And on this layer we are going to add some snow, and we'll go back to the painting brushes to do that. And we are going to use the turpentine brush. And for the color, we are going to use this color over here, 4th color in the 1st row. The opacity of the brush is at 100%, and let's set the size to 30%. And we are going to go over this area, making these bit of rounded motions, horizontal, slightly curved, smudging the paint over here. I also want a little bit of a darker grayish tone. Let's grab something over here, a little bit bluish. And let's place that over here. It's more like a shadow tone for our snow. Snow is often a little bit bluish because of the atmosphere, the blue atmosphere. The shadows of the snow will be a bit bluish. I went a little bit too far here, so let's grab this color again, make this a little bit lighter. And see how this nicely smears around. Now let's also add some snow over here. Again, these horizontal strokes. Just a little bit of snow here. And now we are going to use a nice trick to make some rocks appear. We are going to the layer and then we'll tap it and use a layer mask. And when you paint on a layer mask with black, you will remove parts of that layer. But it's not like erasing, because when you switch back to white, you can make parts appear again. So it's like erasing, but with a lot more control. For our brush, we are going to the treasure chest brush pack again, and we are going to use the fine liner brush again. And we'll set our color to black. You can double tap here at the bottom to select pure black. And now we are going to make some rocks appear. Let's make the brush a little bit bigger actually. Let's set it to 75%. The opacity is still at 100%. And we'll just make these rounded boulder shapes. We have these rocks over here. And here, that rounded shape, we want those to appear first. And then we might have some rocks in front. Just make these oval-like rocky shapes. You can put them in some random places. Try to vary the shapes and sizes a little bit. Make this one a little bit bigger. But remember, if you are going too far, then you can just switch to white and then you can paint the snow back in. So this is giving you full control I'm going to remove this part. And some jagged, a little bit rounded shapes to make it appear as if these rocks are surrounded by that snow. They are sticking out from the snow. And this is a very easy way to create this look here. It's a nice simplified snowy landscape. Let's add a rounded shape here. Here we have this rock. And we can make some rocks appear here. Let's make a nice big boulder over here. And perhaps here. A little one here. I think we might have enough rocks here. I think it's looking good. So now let's add some more definition to our rocks. We are going to use the same technique as we used for our mountains. We are going to use a multiply and a screen layer. First, let's create a multiply layer. First tap layer 3, then tap the plus. And you can see that it's automatically clipped because we already have this clip layer on top. Then tap the N. Scroll up to multiply, and for the color, now let's just grab a color from our canvas, a brown color, by tapping our finger on the screen. We still have the fine liner brush, and let's add a little bit of shadow underneath these rocks because the sun won't reach that area as easily, so that's a little bit darker. So we'll focus on the undersides, but you can also add a few cracks to some rocks, a little bit of texture. So just these undersides. And you can add some dabs in this area as if there are some rocks there as well. Go along all of these little rocks. And we can also make some horizontal jagged strokes here just to add some interest here. Over here, a little bit of shadow, a little bit of dark area. And then once you have gone over all of these areas, we can make another layer on top of this one. Tap the plus, then tap the N and set this one to screen. We can actually stick with the same color, but this time when we paint, it'll lighten the area. So a screen layer is great for adding some highlights without having to pick a different color. And this time, instead of the lower areas, we'll focus on the top parts of these rocks because that's where the light will hit. Just at the top of these rocks, a little bit of light. And here we can make some of these jagged horizontal strokes again, just for some interest, maybe some dabs. some light on this one. And over here, I think we have some nice, interesting texture. Now I want to push it back a little bit by adding more shadow. We'll do that by adding a layer on top of our snow layer. So again, tap the plus. Let's use clipping mask so our shadow won't show up on our mountain. And tap the N, scroll up to multiply. And for our brush, we are going to use the soft brush again. And for the color, let's grab this first color in the second row. The opacity of the brush is at 30%, the size is at 50%. And let's gently glaze over this lower area. I'm actually painting outside of the canvas a little bit. Adding some shadow here. Next, we'll add even more depth by working on these rocks in the front. Let's go to that layer, layer 4. Now, in case you're having trouble with the layers, if you don't have enough space, then we can actually pinch all of these layers together. If you don't want to be merging layers, then you could also decrease the size of your canvas a bit so your iPad can handle more layers. Now let's go to layer 4. Let's set it to alpha lock so we can add some texture to them. Let's go to the industrial brushes and use the wasteland brush. And let's add some color here. Let's first grab that fourth color in the second row. Let's go over these rocks here for some texture. Now let's go even darker. Let's grab this second color in the second row for some touches of dark. And then let's grab this light color, the sixth color in the second row, and go over the top a little bit. Just along that edge, like this. Now to create depth, we are going to blur these. First, we need to turn off alpha lock, so tap the layer, then tap alpha lock, then go to the magic wand and select Gaussian blur. And then let's slide to the right and blur these rocks. Let's set it to 9% and tap the magic wand again. Now you can see that we have some nice depth of field. We need a few more touches for our painting. For instance, let's add some clouds. Let's go to layer 1, tap the plus, and then let's go and grab a brush from the treasure chest brush pack, which is the clouds brush. Where is it? There are so many brushes here. There, the clouds brush. And for the color, we'll grab this fifth color in the first row. The opacity of this brush is at 100% and the size is at 17%. And let's just add some clouds. A few over here on the right side, a little bit over here, and some here on the left side. Making rounded motions, a little bit over here. So you get something like this. And then let's go ahead and use the smudge tool, the little finger, but this time we'll set it to my standard blender, which is also part of the treasure chest brush pack. You can find it over here, the standard blender. The opacity of this brush, or actually the smudging strength, is 50% and the size is at 40%. And I'll just go over these clouds, making them a little bit more wispy, merging them a little bit more with the background, and also making them look less generic. Could also make some rounded motions, making them a bit more fluffy. Just blend them a bit to make them look more real, actually. And to add a sense of scale to our artwork, let's add a little character. That way our mountains will look even bigger. Let's add our character over here in this area. Let's give him a new layer. Let's just put a layer on top of all the others by tapping the plus. And for our brush, we are going to use the fine liner brush. We are going to make a very simple character. It's not going to be super detailed. For the color, we are going to use that first color in the third row. And first, let's just flesh out 2 legs by making these vertical strokes right next to each other. Then we'll get its body, which is like a rectangular shape. And we'll get his arm here, which is like a triangular shape. And another arm, let's make that hang like this. And its head, which is a rounded shape. Might need to make the brush a little bit smaller. Let's go for 30%. To carve him out even more, you can work on the shape. Make his legs a little bit wider. And it's really just a simple character. You can also switch to the eraser. Just tap and hold the eraser to make sure that the eraser is set to the fine liner as well. And let's make this opening a little bit bigger. Back to the brush. You can simply carve your character like this. Perhaps he has like this hoodie. He is prepared for the cold. He's wearing a lot of clothes. So something like this. And now let's turn on alpha lock on this layer by tapping it and turning on alpha lock, and now we'll switch to a different color, the second color in the third row. Now let's just add a little bit of color. Let's make the top here lighter and the arms. Give it an idea of clothes he's wearing. Little line here like he's wearing a body warmer. And perhaps some touches of light here on the legs. So very basic character, but he's really small in the great scheme of things. He's actually a bit too big right now. Let's make him a little bit smaller by going to the move tool and then using one of these anchor points to make him smaller. You can move him a little bit. Then tap the arrow again. And now you can see how adding that character adds a sense of scale to our scene. And there you have created your own mountain landscape. I hope you have enjoyed following this tutorial. Be sure to share your results. And now that you have done this, you are ready to create even more in Procreate. Perhaps you'll like this tutorial, for example. So go ahead and start your next project. And in the meantime, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, because those are all very easy ways to support us and to make sure that we can keep creating these tutorials for you. I want to thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.